Another serious blow for the Prime Minister. Hazel Blears, the Community Secretary, has resigned from her cabinet post just a day after it was confirmed the Home Secretary, Jackie Smith, will stand down as a minister. Ms Blears has paid back £13,000 after she was alleged to have avoided capital gains tax. The timing of her resignation on the eve of local and European elections is being seen by many at Westminster as a deliberate attempt to destabilise the Prime Minister. Let's get the latest from John Sopel, who's at Westminster for us now. John.
Yes, Louise, it's a very straightforward playbook for fighting an election. The day before, the days before, you all come together, you all sing from the same hymn sheet, and you all move in the same direction. But over the past 24 hours, we've had a number of ministers announcing that they'll be reshuffling themselves out of the government. And today, most serious of all, Hazel Blears not only resigning, but issuing a statement where she makes no positive reference to Gordon Brown and the leadership that he's given. All it says is about the changes that need to be brought about. There are some reports that maybe she feared there were going to be fresh allegations about her expenses about to emerge. What certainly has happened is an unbelievable day at Westminster, as our political correspondent Vicky Young now reports.
Hazel Blears leaving Downing Street yesterday afternoon after a meeting with the Prime Minister. She is said to have vented her anger at the way he'd publicly criticised her over expenses. Hours later, she decided to quit. It's an exit timed to cause the maximum impact. In a shock statement this morning, she said she was returning to grassroots politics to help the Labour Party reconnect with the British people. Significantly, there was no praise or support for Gordon Brown's leadership.
Time to go, Prime Minister! Is it time to go?
It piles enormous pressure on the Prime Minister, already damaged by a string of other resignations and the prospect of humiliation in tomorrow's elections. In the Commons, the Conservative leader seized on the disarray in Labour ranks. He said Mr Brown had lost control.
The fact is, what we see is a dysfunctional cabinet, a dysfunctional government led by a Prime Minister who cannot give a lead. Can he perhaps at least guarantee this, that there will be no further resignations ahead of his reshuffle?
Mr Speaker, I hope that he will acknowledge that on all sides of the House the events of the last few weeks have been difficult. And I think it would be unfair for us to pass this question time without acknowledging that in each part of the House people have found it difficulty with the pressures upon them.
Mr Cameron said it was no good blaming the expenses scandal for the government's problems. It was time for a general election, a call echoed by the Liberal Democrat leader.
His government is paralysed by indecision, crippled by infighting, exhausted after 12 long years. It's a tragedy that exactly at the time when people need help, need action, the country doesn't have a government, it has a void. Labour is finished.
The headlines were bad for Mr Brown even before Hazel Blears' resignation. News that Home Secretary Jackie Smith was quitting, as well as others, has given the impression of Labour MPs deserting a sinking ship. Even the normally supportive Guardian newspaper has turned on Mr Brown, accusing him of having no vision, no plan and no support, and calling on his colleagues to cut him loose.
It's a challenge to the Prime Minister and the whole government to keep our nerve at a time when we have got to come through a genuine crisis in our politics. We've got to clean up this system. We've got to clean up the mess. And that's exactly what the Prime Minister is getting on with.
Mr Brown now has to act quickly and decisively to stabilise his government. The timing of Hazel Blears' resignation can be seen as nothing other than a direct challenge to his authority. Vicky Young, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, this latest body blow comes after weeks of revelations in the Daily Telegraph setting out the sometimes embarrassing, excruciating details of ministers' expenses claims. Last month, the Justice Minister, Shahid Malik, stepped down pending an inquiry into claims that he failed to declare a subsidised rent on his constituency home in Dewsbury. Yesterday lunchtime came news that the Home Secretary, Jackie Smith, was to step down from the Cabinet at the imminent reshuffle. She'd face criticism over her expenses. We also heard yesterday that the Cabinet Office Minister, Tom Watson, a close ally of the Prime Minister, would be leaving the government as well, and that the Children's Minister, Beverly Hughes, was stepping down as a minister and would not be contesting her seat at the next general election. Her decision is for family reasons and not connected to the expenses row. Well, today the Community Secretary, Hazel Blears, resigned from the government, adding to the pressure on Gordon Brown. Well, our political correspondent Ross Hawkins looks at the rise and fall of Hazel Blears.
She was the ever-cheerful, motorbike-loving cabinet minister, but neither her optimism nor her leathers could protect her from the expenses scandal. News she had not paid capital gains tax on the sale of a London flat proved damaging, and her decision to hand over a £13,000 cheque to the tax authorities wasn't enough to make the story go away. It certainly didn't stop the Prime Minister singling her out for criticism.
She has not broken the law, and she's not broken the rules of the House of Commons. It is unacceptable behaviour, and she has accepted it is unacceptable behaviour. Now, a detailed written statement setting out our proposals will be made by Harriet Harman.
Many at Westminster thought it was her comments after that internet appearance by the Prime Minister that made her vulnerable. YouTube if you want to, she'd written, but it's no substitute for knocking on doors. And she said his government's communications had been a lamentable failure. This daughter of a factory fitter once had ambitions to be the deputy leader of the Labour Party. She came last in that contest, but it didn't stop her becoming community secretary. Hazel Blears says she's going back to her Salford constituency and to grassroots politics. She'll have more time to knock on doors there. Now her ministerial career has come to an end. Ross Hawkins, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, I'm joined now by our political editor, Nick Robinson. And Nick, these are fast-moving events. Is there now a serious question mark over whether Gordon Brown can survive this?
There undoubtedly is that question mark. If you'd asked me a few days ago, a few weeks ago, I would not have said that. Gordon Brown looked secure, the Cabinet were worried, his party were worried. Now, though, there is a momentum to events that means that Hazel Blears, in my view deliberately, has posed the question about his leadership. She is saying effectively to everyone in her party, make your mind up, let's have that argument we've been having in private about whether he should stay on, whether it would be worse or better to get rid of him, practically whether it could be done and who could replace him. And I think the focus of it now, John, will be the cabinet reshuffle. Can he get the cabinet reshuffle he wants, or will other ministers say, actually, having thought about, I don't want to serve you, or I'm not prepared to serve you in the job you want to give me? That, in effect, would be a vote of no confidence. He would have to go.
Should we look, here at Westminster, the ministers have been flurrying round, offering their support to Prime Minister, trying to play it down, as you would expect. Should we look out for the ministers that we don't see on College Green today, or the ministers we do see?
It's the ones that you don't see, of course. It's the ones who look a bit awkward on that front bench when the Prime Minister was asking his questions. They have decisions to take today. Are they now going to join this rebellion, which it is in effect, and say it is time for the Labour Party to switch its leader? They've got a long few days. It won't come today. It'll come after the local elections, after the European elections, then they'll have to choose.
And Nick, have you ever known the run-up to an election campaign where you've had this happening, a ministerial resignation the day before polling?
It's quite unprecedented. The whole point of party loyalty is whatever you think, you shut up before people go to the polls. To actually announce your resignation on the eve of poll is an extraordinary thing to do, not least for the woman who's actually in charge of the local elections as community secretary. Now, little rumours and mutters coming from friends of Gordon Brown that Hazel Blears was worried about fresh revelations about her expenses. A Cabinet Office compliance unit has been going through them all. No confirmation of that, but they will try and imply she had to go because she was in the soup, rather than that she's going as some act of principle about the future of the Labour Party.
OK, Nick Robinson, thanks very much indeed. Well, extraordinary times at Westminster, an awful lot more from us. But now back to you, Louise, in the studio.
John, thank you. We'll be seeing you later. Thank you. In today's other news, Al-Qaeda has said it has killed a British man who was taken hostage in West Africa. The group holding